Look now at these latest developments with Paolo Von Schirach. He's the president of the Global Policy Institute, a public policy research institution. I want to get your thoughts on Jenny's reporting from Beijing, and also Foreign Minister Wang Yi, just really once again reiterating just kind of how interconnected all these companies are with the China. They're blended. They aren't a Chinese company or a U.S. company anymore. It really kind of gets to the core of this whole problem, doesn't it?
Yes, and also, I guess it demonstrates how complicated it is to resolve whatever other issues there may be on the table between the United States and China through tariffs. Because indeed, China is, in many instances, the final assembly point of inputs that come from different countries, oddly enough, also from the United States. And because of the global supply chains and the way things are built these days, they're not all made in one place, whether it's the United States, China, Mexico, or any other country. And so, as the Chinese government has argued, by trying to hurt China in some ways, America indirectly hurts itself, which I think it's a valid point, and which shows that tariffs are really a blunt instrument that doesn't really serve the intended purposes. If America, as America does, have issues with China, they should be dealt at a different level, not trying to use tariffs as leverage to get other things, because it backfires.
There have been reports out that Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is called Vice Premier Liu He, saying, let's talk about getting talks going. No real firm commitment one way or the other, but do you see that as a positive sign?
Yes, of course, and that's the way it should be. But of course, once you create these atmospheres which are very toxic, and so to speak, you poison the well, it's hard to say, okay, let's forget all about all this and let's get together and resolve our differences. Because clearly, countries, governments have their own dignity, if you wish, and they don't want to be pushed around or give the impression that they've been successfully pushed around, and therefore there has to be some kind of adjustment here. And hopefully, how can I say, wisdom will prevail on both sides. And again, the United States has some issues. You listed sectors of the Chinese economy where foreign investors cannot get in. Although that list has shrunk, it's still significant. There's issues about technology transfer, issue about the way in which China has applied competition law. In other words, there are some legitimate issues, but this kind of, how can I say, gunshot, approach of hitting all sectors and using this as leverage, it's not productive. So hopefully the two sides can get together in whatever fora, whatever format they prefer, and try to address the underlying issues. But again, the problem is not really trade imbalances, because trade imbalances occur, and I know Mr. Trump has different views on all this, and we all kind of got a feeling for that, but that's not really the problem. The problem should be reciprocal market, reciprocity in market access, and then let the best guy win. That's how it's always been in trade for thousands of years.
But the interesting thing is, and to your point, there are markets that are closed off, as you said, the number is shrinking. But I was just at an event where I talked to a number of Chinese investors who want to come into the United States, and they're closing the door here as well. It's a reciprocal thing, isn't it?
Indeed, yes. Now, clearly, because again, as we know, there are some, especially in the Republican Party, and we've seen this even in some aspects of the defense budget just authorized, where clearly there are measures aimed at precluding foreign, but this is really mostly Chinese investments in sectors that are perceived to be strategic in the United States, with the idea that if the Chinese get into our sacred technologies, so to speak, that then they get some kind of an edge, and that will help enable China to become a bigger power than it is today. And this is viewed not in favorable terms on Capitol Hill. So there are a number of different, how can I say, levels to this dispute. Some of it is the trade imbalance. Something else is about Chinese investments in strategic sectors, and hopefully, again, the two sides will find a way to be more rational about all this.
That leads to my next question. There was a provocative piece, a column in the Washington Post just a couple of days ago, and the headline said, Trump should be careful, tariffs stick around. It talked about the long ago chicken war, which basically some tariffs that went into place then, and it's a complicated story, but some tariffs that went into place then are still in place today. And the author of this piece said, look, these tariffs aren't going to be around for 6 months. They could be around for 60 years. There's a danger once you start playing favorites, isn't there?
Absolutely, yes. You know, and again, it's a blunt, as I said before, it's a blunt instrument. And it's hard to say, okay, no, we're going to pinpoint and create damage right in that particular point because we want to address that particular issue. It goes everywhere. It touches all kinds of sectors. There are lots of how can I say, unintended casualties. Clearly here back home already, the farm belt in the United States is already beginning to feel the heat of counter tariffs from China because they can't sell their excess products into the Chinese market. So that the Trump administration has promised some extra benefits for them. This gets really complicated.
You start playing favorites. There's winners,
absolutely.
losers. Yeah.
So this is hopefully. I hope the administration realizes that there is a better way, hopefully, and the Chinese government also would agree that they can address differences in a constructive way without going into this escalation, which, as your reporting indicates, can really get out of hand.
That's very, very true. Paolo Von Schirach, always a pleasure. Have yourself a great weekend. Thanks for coming in.